Hello, everyone. This is Michael Stone. And first of all, I want to thank you from the just deepest reaches of my heart for participating in the 2020 Shamanism Summit. It's been a real labor of love for the last 6 years. And I was excited to have Heather Ashamara join me and be my co host this year. Isn't she lovely? And I hope you really enjoyed all the people that we had on. And this is my offering to you. Some people say, well, what is a cultural mystic? And we think of a mystic as someone who actually spends time in seclusion, perhaps in a cave or in a place for decades and connecting with the divine and the deeper aspects of our spiritual nature. And that's one way that mystics have participated in a long time. But at this point in our evolution, we need to get connected. And so when I talk about a cultural mystic, I'm talking about someone who uses everything, who goes out into the world and uses every interaction, every communication, every upset, everything that disturbs them, everything that frightens you for your own awakening, for the opportunity to use those things that happen to us to enter into a more awakened, deeper spiritual sense of yourself. You could say that a spiritual mystic is someone who has a direct experience of the sacred, that it's not an outside job, that it's really something that is unmediated by religion or an outside source, that the more conscious we become, the more we have a direct connection with the divine. I often think of all these different religions that are fighting together, and they're all pointing to the moon. They're pointing to the same moon. All the three Abrahamic religions are pointing to the moon. All the so-called pagan spirituality are all pointing to the same moon, but they're focusing on their hand rather than the moon. So a cultural mystic is someone who really focuses on their inner expansion, their inner growth, and to heal themselves in relationship to the world, because we live in a world that is already interconnected. The idea of becoming one is kind of weird in a way because we already are. Everything we do, everything we say, everything we are affects everyone and everything else. It's what the mystics have said for thousands of years and what quantum physicists have been acknowledging for the last 100 years. Our language is based in the mechanistic Newtonian paradigm that says we're objects in a world of objects. We view the world from a mechanistic perspective. How else can you say clear-cutting trees or putting money ahead of life or damaging our own nest? How can you explain that? And it's become normalized. It's just accepted, and it's not acceptable. And if we don't recognize our deep interconnection, the lack of separation, the non-duality, if we don't experience that, and I don't mean realize it in our head, I mean to have an experience of that, well, it's obvious where we're headed. And that's pretty much the annihilation of all life on this planet. But we're also at this very critical and special time where we can lean into a future that will cause an evolutionary jump. And that's why this practice of cultural mysticism is so, so important, to still ourselves, to slow down, to interact with people, engage with people. people we like, people we don't like, to quit othering and saying, well, I'm like this, I'm part of this group, so that makes this group wrong. No, the truth is that we're all connected. Yeah, it's confusing sometimes. You know, I was in China years ago, and I was at one of these temples, and I asked the guard what were the two kind of lion gargoyle things at the enter of the at the entryway of the temple. And he told me, well, those are the guardians of the truth. The guardians of the truth are paradox and confusion. And you may be in these challenging, changing times in both of those places. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. In fact, it's really a good time to embrace uncertainty, to really open ourselves to not knowing. Why do we want to know? We want to know so we can have control of the future and the situation, but there is no control over the future and the situation because all we have is right now. And cultural mystics practice getting here right now. So I want to share with you 3 practices of being a cultural mystic. They're simple and they're very difficult, but they're simple. The 3 practices are presencing, witnessing, and embracing. So I'm going to explain them to you, and as information, they mean nothing. But then we'll do a meditation and we'll practice, because this is all a practice. Everything is happening right now. That future that you think is causing you pain or caused you pain and is still causing you pain, that imagined future, that remembered past, it's all happening right now. And there are parts of right now that are frozen in the past or frozen in the future, but there's also great potentiality by integrating them, by immersing ourselves in our own relatedness to the world. We can integrate those unintegrated parts of ourselves. And we do that through these 3 practices. So what are the 3 practices? The first one is presencing. What I mean by presencing is that we stop and we get still and we focus in on what's happening right now. And we focus our attention in a way that expands our capacity. It's like looking through a microscope. We're looking in, we're distinguishing our emotions. What am I feeling? So many people don't have a capacity to even feel. I've gone through this for so many years, being a survivor of trauma, of not really sure what I'm feeling. And it's such a vast, complex, and beautiful array when we start to be really feeling our feelings, not feeling them in our head as a concept. We can even create tears and all kinds of things as a thought about our feelings, but to be embodied in our body and to feel our feelings. And by the same token, to feel our sensations and the flows of energy and the ebbs and flows and the breath and all the systems, the digestive system, the endocrine system, the nervous system, the breath, everything that's happening in our body is going on. If you were having to actually run all these systems, well, you would fail, you know. But this is the miracle of being alive, is that all these systems are working. And to presence ourselves in the mystery of the sensations in our body. Our first instrument is our body. And much of this work is about dropping out of our head. Not that there aren't great uses for having a head. It's, gets us in and out of the door, and we make a living with it, and we do all kinds of things. but to actually drop into the heart. Heart Math Institute has shown that the heart, the electromagnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times greater than that of the mind. 5,000 times greater. But there's been a coup in your body, in your being, and the mind has taken over the heart. And we want to move back to that place where the heart is the commander in chief and the mind is the obedient servant of the heart. So presencing is to come in and to bring our awareness to the vastness of what's going on every moment, to leave the narrative, to the story. You know, we all have a story, a narrative. Most of it was formed in the early years of our life. Some of it's ancestral, some of it's familial, much of it is cultural, but it's a narrative. And that story only has one purpose. The purpose of that story is to survive. So it's very tricky. It can get you on a spiritual path and do a spiritual bypass like nobody's business. It can convince you that that ice cream or sugar or cake that you've been trying to see is so important to you, or the cigarette or the alcohol or whatever addictions, that they're so important. So when you presence yourself, you become just a witness to that. We open up all our senses and we let go of what should be or what shouldn't be. And we just open to what's possible, what's happening right now. Not even what's possible, but just what's happening right now. Too soon for what's possible. Just get here in this moment. The presence is always here. Mostly, we're not. And so to take the time to sit and do this kind of meditation that I'm going to work with you with is really, the future depends on it, not just your future, but the future, because we each make a difference. And the healing we do by integrating the unintegrated parts and by finding the truth, our soul's truth, allows us to heal and create a greater capacity to see with the heart and to be compassionate and kind and open and loving to all of life. And so the first step is this presencing, this bringing our awareness in. And we're going to do this in a while. I'm just telling you about it, but you know, the territory is not the map. I'm just telling you the map that we're going to be doing a meditation around. The second characteristic of these three basic fundamental, what I call the fundamental practices of mysticism. There's much deeper and much more, obviously, but these are things that everybody can do and practice all through the day. And the second one is witnessing. Well, what does that mean? So we take our focus and we expand it, and it's like we can look through a microscope and oh, we can see all the little things we couldn't see before. And we, you know, when we witness, we start to witness inside and say, oh, when I breathe in, it's interesting. The energy goes up on the top part and down the bottom. And then when I breathe out, it's going the other way, or is it? And what happens to my face? And we begin to witness and we see the nuances and we become an observer of the emotions and the sensations and even the story. And we recognize this story we call I or me or mine. And it begins in the witnessing phase to dissolve into it. And we say, well, wait a minute. If I'm observing it, the story, and the emotions and the sensations, well, then who's observing it? Ah, suddenly, am I one or am I two? Who is it that's witnessing the me that I'm observing? And that gives us distance from our story, enough distance to not get swept up by the story, that perpetual voice of doubt and discontent and criticism and the machinery that's running all the time. The object that I call myself, me. Who are you? Oh, I'm a teacher. Who are you? I'm a man. All those stories that we've got that carry huge amount of baggage. So by becoming the witness, we move from being an object to being the space of the occurring. This is an unfolding experience that from moment to moment happens. And when we allow ourselves to still ourselves, that place at the top of the breath, that still point, and the release of the breath at the bottom of the breath, and we bring ourselves into a place of stillness. And then things begin to arise. Old things, old stories, shame, doubt, guilt, all coming up, arising. And we think, oh, I'm having a bad meditation because all of these things are coming up. No, no, not at all. Or I want to get back to when it's really still when I meditated. No, whatever is coming up is wanting to be loved. The third stage is to embrace whatever's arising. Change does not come from being what you're not. It happens by being who you are, what's happening right now. And that creates the conditions for the possibility of real transformation, real evolution. And it creates a spaciousness where the doubt and the anxiety and the fear were feeling like they were closing you in. Suddenly, there's a more spacious interiority, and you go, oh, and my doubt, my I'm not good enough comes up, and you take and you say, oh, I love that, not good enough. I can hold that. Or my anger, I can hold my little anger. I can hold that time that, that horrible thing happened to me. I can see it. It's not happening now, but we act as though it's happening. So we're always in this stage of fright or flight or fear or fainting or running, or it's this old uh, reptilian brain that is throwing up this information. It's really interesting too, because the choices that we make in a time of awareness are choices that come from the frontal, the new brain, the frontal lobe. And the transfer of information from the frontal lobe is about 40 data packets per second. Now, the reptilian brain, the old kind of recorder, but it doesn't exactly record what happens. It records everything, but it doesn't exactly record what happens. It records what we say about what happens, which is very different. And that is processing information, data packets, at 40 million packets per second. So the odds are 1,000,000 to 1. That's why we have practices to still, to find ourselves in that place, that choice point between the stimulus and the response, where we have a choice, that momentary choice to be here and to not grasp onto the story, to whatever is happening, to actually stay. And then the things come up, the arise, the memories, and we go, I can love that. Or we can even embrace from the point of view of saying, I can't love that, but I can love that I don't love that, and that it's still protecting me. Because all these things have been dissociated, all this soul loss, all the frozen parts that have been pushed down, was a very intelligent nervous system that allowed us to survive in times of great fright, great challenge, great fear. But we haven't got a way to release those. In tribal ceremonies, the whole community would get around and tell and love you, or you'd go through initiation or a rite of passage. But in our culture, we don't have that. So we learn to be the loving force that we didn't perhaps get, the nourishment, the touch, the love that we needed when we were young. We can give it to ourselves now as it arises in our meditation, in our contemplation, in this place of embracing. So again, we have presencing, bringing ourselves in to zero in, to focus in, to expand our awareness on what's happening in our body, in our emotions, and in our thoughts. And so we presence ourselves and we become the witness of those. And we, as a witness, we allow ourselves to let things come up. We don't push them away. And as they come up, then we move to the third stage of embracing. You know, we suffer so much over not wanting to be the things that not wanting things to be the way they are, but they are the way they are. They're not any other way. And they're not the way they're not either. But we suffer over that. So this suffering comes from not wanting things to be as they are, but they are that way. So we need to cultivate not knowing as a practice and just allowing things to arise, to move from doing and chasing life to being the space in which life arises, so that we can embrace, allow, and receive whatever is happening with love and wonder, and embracing that with curiosity and just loving, letting love arise in the meta dialogue underneath all of the wounding and the separation and the parts that have been marginalized. And we can open the door to our soul's calling, to allow our soul to enter in. And then we find our purpose. And we find our purpose is not a place to get to, it's a place to come from. It's not a destination. It's always here and now, and now, and now. So these are three of the fundamental practices of being a cultural mystic. So I want to do a meditation with you. So let's just maybe take a moment to get comfortable and get yourself in a straight back position somewhere. You can do this with your eyes closed or eyes open. And we'll just take a moment to let you get settled. Okay, are we ready? So as I said, you can let your eyes remain open, or you can just let them go closed. I prefer, especially when I'm leading a meditation, to go inward and let my eyes go closed. So I'll just do that as we begin. And just notice that you're sitting in a body. And feel your spine, your feet on the floor. And just relax into a body. Just take a nice deep breath and notice your embodiment. I'm here. I'm in a body. And just begin to notice the breath. And breathing in. And stillness at the end of the breath, then we release on the out breath. And stillness at the end of the breath. And notice how just breathing brings us more inward, into our body. And so we just spend a few minutes following the breath. Notice if it's gentle, just breathing in. Smooth. And continuous, just following the breath. And if thoughts arise, come back to the breath. And the breath is a cycle that you can rely on when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. Simply come back to the breath, which will allow you to begin to presence yourself. Notice what happens to your body when you breathe in. How does the breath move through the body? Notice how the breath affects your face. And your shoulders. Gently, smoothly, continuous breath. And bringing your awareness into different parts of your body, feeling your feet on the floor. Feel the sensations in the four corners of the feet, how they touch the ground. Letting the breath come right up through the feet. And begin to notice where the breath and awareness goes, the energy flows. So you can sense the sensations, but you can also see how my feet are touching the floor. If you have shoes on, how they feel in the shoes. Feel the tingling. And just bringing awareness, looking into the feet. Perhaps some of you can even see the cells in the skeletal structure. And for sure you can feel the sensations. Notice the flow of energy going to and coming from the feet. as we move up the lower leg, the ankles, calves, the shins. We've moved from presencing, with presencing, into witnessing the flows, the musculature, the bones, up into the knees, noticing the parts that have the most movement, and the parts that perhaps you can't feel anything, or maybe parts where there's some pain or discomfort. And just allowing it all, just witnessing, breathing, witnessing, allowing as we move up the thighs and the hamstrings, into the hips, notice the pelvic floor, how it connects with the tailbone and the spine. And feeling the curve of the spine. Just exploring the inner body with your inner sight, sensations. Moving into the lungs and the heart. If your mind wanders, just bring it back. Back to the breath, back to the sensations, into the shoulders and the arms, upper arm, and the blood flow down the lower arm into the fingers. Feel the hands and the fingers. Hands are the messengers of the heart. Just noticing. And up the neck and into the face, relaxing the facial muscles. Muscles around the eyes. The crown of the head. The forehead, just relaxing and breathing. And feeling the space around your body. Perhaps feeling the energy around you and how far it goes out. And you feel out to the edges of the walls. Can you feel them? And just tuning our instrument. Witnessing what's happening. And then we notice any emotions that are arising, feelings. Can you discern what you're feeling? Where does that feeling coming from in your body? Maybe it's really hard to feel. perhaps you just feel a sense of tightness in the chest or longing. You don't need to figure it out, just feel what's arising. And then notice any thoughts that are arising. Any disturbances that might have arisen. Perhaps an old memory, a feeling of guilt or shame or joy. Can you just embrace that as we move into the third stage of becoming a cultural mystic? Do I have disappointments that arise? Habitual patterns. They're coming up because they want to be loved. There's nothing to fix because there's nothing broken. Perhaps there's shame or guilt. Can you love that? Perhaps there's an age. Say, oh, that reminds me of when I was 3 or 5, 6. That horrible thing that happened. Can you love that? And perhaps the answer is no, I can't. Well, can you love that you can't? Can you embrace that? That's the intelligence of the nervous system. It's not time. And it'll be time when you can embrace it. You can forgive. You can let go of resentments. But you don't have to. When you do, you integrate them then. When you can love them, they don't have a hold on you. And this is how the mystical paths can heal not only you, but when you can become more present and not in the habitual patterns of the mind and the story. People around you become more present and heal just by who you're being. So anything that keeps you from being connected, love that. You are already connected. They're simply patterns and stories that keep us separate. The world needs you to be whole at this time. To claim your soul's birthright, your essential goodness you were born with. That hasn't left, it's just suppressed. We reclaim our essential goodness by loving whatever arises, by embracing it, by being the adult that holds the hurt child and embraces her or him. That love that you didn't get so long ago, the being held, the nourishment. Now's the time to give it to yourself. Can you just put your arms around yourself and love that part of you that's been hurt? Could be a big hurt or a little hurt. Doesn't matter. Just put your arms around yourself. Feel the love that you have to give. And when you can give that to yourself, you can give it to the world. And that's what the world needs. More love, more tenderness, more kindness. All the things you were born with, your essential goodness, your wanting to contribute. Now's the time to reclaim those gifts. And we do that by becoming more present, by becoming the witness rather than the story. Becoming the author rather than a spear carrier in someone else's play. Living out your essential goodness, your soul's journey. This is a path of reuniting with your most essential self. I hope you will do this often and use this meditation as it suits you. And now just allowing yourself to gently come back and take a couple nice deep breaths as we return. Thank you. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for being willing to love yourself, to trust yourself, to honestly and authentically witness what an amazing being you are, what an amazing body you have, what an enormous heart you have. Thank you for participating. I hope you will join us in other meditations. You can find many meditations on thewelloflight.com. Again, thank you for being part of the 2020 Shamanism Summit. Much love to you all. I hope to see many of you soon. Bye for now.